So I've been talking about vulnerability a lot lately in my personal life. And I think that's one of the signs I have when it means I need to start journaling about it. But I decided to try talking about it out loud first, mostly for my own benefit, and we'll see where it goes. Maybe there's something valuable in here for you too. I do have some notes written on it up in front of my teleprompter. That's why I'm looking at you so intently. So I wanted to see where I can get with the topic of vulnerability, because what I've been saying in my personal life is, well, more of just like acknowledging how much vulnerability is out there, how often you see it in people day to day. But it's not so much that you actually see the vulnerability, but you see people avoiding vulnerability. You see little behaviors that come out where they either like preemptively dismiss vulnerability, or they'll preemptively like avoid it or run away from it. I think running away tends to be more common. You might call that anxious avoidant. You probably would call it anxious avoidant. But I just wanted to talk about it and go over what I see in it and how that all kind of comes together. Because it's once you start knowing how to look for it, it's quite obvious. Well, let me start by saying vulnerability is that moment when you're in between feeling joy or feeling harm. Something I say to myself that's mostly applicable to myself is it's good when you feel fear because you are just as well open to joy. And it's almost like a mantra. What that really is highlighting is that when you feel fear, it doesn't mean something is going to go wrong. It means that you're feeling the potential of something going wrong or something to harm you. But potential means risk, and risk doesn't mean guarantee. It just means one way or the other. So when you are feeling fear, when I'm feeling fear, we're talking about me. When I'm feeling fear, I say that to myself to remind myself that it's not guaranteed and I need to stop and assess what's going on. I first shared this when I went up on stage and spoke. I shared some stories at an open mic night in my local town. That was something pretty big for me because I don't know if you'd call it stage fright, but I definitely have like a social anxiety. And I got up on stage and I shared exactly that it's good when you feel fear because you're just as well open to joy. And I found that created a lot of emotional resonance with the audience. By getting up there and sharing my own vulnerability first, it invited them to attune to what I was feeling. That was really powerful, and that's kind of like what got me started up on this topic so much, is seeing that if I exposed myself first, others were receptive to it because I think that everyone feels vulnerable at times. I'm pretty certain everyone feels vulnerable at some point or another. But there's something powerful about it when someone else opens up and exposes what makes them feel vulnerable first. It makes others more willing to attune and listen in and be vulnerable themselves. That's really powerful, I've noticed. So when I was up on stage and I said it's good when you feel fear, it was me acknowledging in that moment that like, hey, I am feeling anxious or scared. And I need to stop and assess like, what is the actual risk here? What is actually going on? And of course, I'm just up on stage at a local small town open mic night. So there's no real risk other than being embarrassed, I guess. But by coming forward and like owning that embarrassment and that vulnerability, it really just kind of like killed it. And it allowed me to be up there and just be vulnerable. So I guess I was trying to say, it's not so much about being like beating back vulnerability with logic and saying, yeah, I'm just on stage. It's no big deal. Just do it anyway. It's more about highlighting that moment of vulnerability to yourself, to acknowledge it and to accept it, and then to work through it. It's not about getting rid of it. I still felt scared the whole time I was on stage, the whole time I was reading. But I sat with it rather than trying to dismiss it or destroy it or get rid of it, avoid it, anxiously avoid it, right? That's what's really big about getting up and showing your vulnerability to other people first. You're showing that you're not hiding from it. You're showing that you're willing to acknowledge it and sit with it. And that's pretty powerful. I've noticed people really seem to pick up on that when you do that. So that's when you anxiously avoid things, right? That's what I was kind of talking about, is getting there, sitting there and owning it instead of running away from it. Running away would be an anxious avoidance style. Sitting with it is a way to not overcome that, but to be with it. But sitting with it, sitting with anxiety or fear or vulnerability isn't just something you can do for being anxious avoidant. I've also noticed in some of other people I know, and I guess myself too, is some people will get angry or upset. They'll just sort of like attack. And it used to seem random to me. I've got examples in my head, but I don't want to call people out. But I've just noticed that sometimes friends and stuff will be kind of bullies, not like real assholes or jerks, but they'll just be a little rude. And the more I think on it, the more I realize what's going on is that they're preemptively trying to avoid a vulnerable moment. I'm thinking of two brothers who obviously love each other very much, but anytime, like, not even the topic of love, but like a moment of loving should happen, they start bullying each other. And it's not like in a loving bully way. It's really just kind of they're being dicks to each other. And from the sideline, I look at that and I say, wow, I wouldn't really want to be a part of that. That doesn't sound fun or enjoyable, to never be able to express love. But, on reflection, I've realized they're feeling that love deep down internally. They probably haven't acknowledged it. And instead of confronting or being able to sit with that love, and love is vulnerable, they get angry and they start attacking each other instead. Verbally attacking each other, not physically. But that's just another little way that vulnerability is behind the scenes, is really the way to say it. It's behind the scenes. And all these little behaviors of like anger or anxious avoidance come out in front of that. And if you don't stop to acknowledge it, if you can't have like little mantras, like it's good when you feel fear, it's really hard to acknowledge those moments, to see those moments, to find them. They just kind of like whiz by behind these behaviors that we display. If we avoid being vulnerable, we are avoiding trust, whether we mean to or not. Trust is an exchange of vulnerability. You cannot trust someone else, and someone else cannot trust you if you cannot accept being vulnerable. That's because it's not a two-way street, it's two one-way streets. You give trust, and they give it back. Communicating a hurt while avoiding being vulnerable looks like an attack, a preemptive defense against your own vulnerability. Yeah, that's exactly how those two brothers seem to act. It's a preemptive defense. They're feeling vulnerable deep down. They probably don't acknowledge it, so they preemptively defend themselves with an offense. Everyone should be able to feel vulnerable within themselves, because there's what's the risk? It's not like other people are going to find out. But still, it's really tough. It's a very human condition issue, or I don't know what the words are. It's a very human thing to struggle with being vulnerable, especially when there's others. I think the fear of vulnerability probably comes from the external world coming in. I think as children, we're way more comfortable being vulnerable until we go out in the world and start getting hurt. And then we start retracting in and trying to avoid vulnerability. So I've been talking for about 30 minutes. Hopefully I can stitch everything together into something presentable. But the main thing here that I really wanted to talk about was that vulnerability really does lead you to joy. It's going to lead you to get hurt as well. But once you feel that joy is worth being hurt every now and then, you're on your way. That's really it, is once you can acknowledge that being hurt is worth feeling fulfillment, then you're going to start exploring this readily. If this sounds like something you're interested in, then I would encourage you to find ways to feel vulnerable. Start small and build up. I feel like that open mic night for me was It felt like a big step, but in retrospect, it was an appropriate size step. Find ways to expose yourself, to feel a little uncomfortable. And when you do that, you're going to be opening yourself up to surprise yourself. Because that's really the heart of overcoming vulnerability, or these behaviors that preempt or dismiss vulnerability, is by surprising your expectations of the harm that can come out of vulnerable moments. Right? When I was anxious on stage, of course my body was feeling fearful and vulnerable, and I still do when I get up there, just not quite so much anymore. But you have this thing in your head saying like, oh, nope, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt, you can't do this. But then when you do it and you wake up tomorrow and you realize nothing really changed, you're starting to quell that fear just a little bit. You're usurping those expectations. And as you can start to quell those expectations, you're going to find yourself feeling more comfortable in more ordinary, everyday, vulnerable moments. And the more you chase vulnerable moments, the more fulfillment and joy you're going to be exposing yourself up to. And let me be clear, like the goal isn't to be like perfectly 100% vulnerable all the time. It's really just to kind of swing that pendulum back. Swing that pendulum back the other way. Just a little bit, until you find a happy medium. Because I'm willing to bet if you've watched this video all the way through, then you're feeling like the pendulum is too far on one side or the other. You're feeling unfulfilled. You don't feel like your life is what you wanted it to be. You don't feel like you have control of your life or agency over yourself. And really, that's probably because a lot of these behaviors are dictating what you do and don't do without you ever actually consciously acknowledging it. And that's really what this is all about, is being able to consciously acknowledge when you feel vulnerable and to consciously sit with it and acknowledge it, not just dismiss it, not to tell yourself, nope, I shouldn't be feeling anxiety, I shouldn't be feeling fear, I shouldn't be feeling anger. No, you should be feeling those things. Just sit with them. Sit with them. And slowly, as you push yourself through that, you will start to see that your expectations will shift and change, and you will start feeling more fulfilled, more joy, and like you have control over your life. Anyway, thanks for watching. And I'll catch you next time in like 20 days when I make another video.